Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about hiking shoes, mostly Ultras, and how I came to this brand as a hiking shoe. So whenever my trail experience started in 2020, I started off in a pair of Vivo Barefoots just like this, except for they were leather. These are canvas. But this obsession with a wide toe box started with me long before I ever got on the Appalachian Trail. I really like to be able to move my toes in my shoes, and like if I'm stepping over rocks and roots, I like the feeling of gripping with my toes, and that's something that's always been important to me before my hiking career, right? And whenever I was trying to, pick a shoe out in 2020 or late 2019, whenever I was getting ready for trail, I ordered a couple of different pairs off the internet. When they came in, I tried them. I didn't like the way they fit. I couldn't do them. So last minute, I decided to roll with the Vivo Barefoots, and I made it to Irwin, Tennessee with those, which really destroyed my feet. I remember along the way, people kept telling me I was stupid for wearing those shoes and that I needed a regular pair of hiking shoes. And I think that kept like fueling the fire. Like, you think it's stupid, I'm gonna go further with them. Well, made it to Irwin, Tennessee, and the shoes were actually holding up pretty well. They could have got a lot more miles, but decided it was time to get some hiking shoes there in Irwin, and that's why I initially went with the Ultra uh, Lone Peaks back in 2020 first, because of the wide toe box, right? And I was really concerned about my toes blistering up and not having that, extra toe movement that I like so much. And when I first switched to them in Irwin back in 2020, I remember I was really hoping it would help a lot of my foot pain and calf pain and knee pain that I was dealing with for that first hike. But they really didn't. I think I'd already done the damage to my feet, that year. I remember right before I got off trail in 2020, I was using the Solomons. I'm not sure exactly what the model name was, but they're the really durable ones that have no toe box compared to the Ultras. Decided that I was going to try to, forget about the toe box and just go with the more durable shoe, because that was a big issue for me in 2020. My budget was, dwindling quick, and just bought these shoes, the Ultra Lone Peaks, back in Irwin, Tennessee, and I think mid Virginia or so is when they really started to fail on me, and that's when I decided to go with the Solomons, because everybody said that was a shoe that was going to last the entire trail or the rest of the trail for me. Well, switching to those Solomons was an absolute mistake. They destroyed my toes over and over again. And while the shoe was really durable, like no doubt it would have lasted a long time, you could tell like the rubber on the sole was a really hard, durable rubber, but like brand new right out the box, if you stepped on a dusty rock, it was slippery, right? So what you gained in durability on the sole, you were losing in grip. But yeah, I don't have that pair of Solomons anymore. I'm not sure what happened to them. I wish I could show you guys just so y'all get an understanding or an idea. But they were just a lot more like a hiking shoe boot hybrid, made to be really durable and to last a really long time. They have like a pull string situation, so you didn't have to tie the laces. But yeah, so when I got back on trail in 21 to finish up, I decided to go with the Ultra Olympus 4s, I believe. That was the first pair I had. Now, I met Hawk on trail in Duncannon in 2020, and he's the one that suggested the Olympus to me. And so when I was going back to finish up in 21, I decided to take his advice, and I really liked the shoe. They got me all the way from Duncannon to Katahdin, Maine, with no serious injuries or issues with my feet. The ridiculously wide sole, super, super thick Vibram sole. It's like a 0 millimeter drop, so it really like promotes a natural stride. And there's a rock plate in here. You could step on like the pointiest rock you could imagine right in the center with all your weight and not worry about how it's going to hurt your foot, right? So after finishing up the second half of my first Appalachian Trail Traverse with the Ultra Olympus, I decided to stick with these for my last hike. Now, when me and Bob first started, I went with the Gore-Tex version. Bob wanted to do the Gore-Tex Speed Goat version, Speed Goats. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of, see how Gore-Tex trail runners would work out there for a long distance hike. And I really expected to go back to, regular trail runners, but it was interesting. So yeah, that first pair of Gore-Tex trail runners I had last year, the only pair I had last year, I want to note that they were really rigid, right? Like they never quite broke in like a regular pair of trail runners. So if you are looking at like a Gore-Tex version, I would recommend sizing up, like at least a half size. Just me. But anyways, I wore these Ultra Olympus shoes for my entire hike with the exception of these Lone Peaks. And now I did switch from like a size 10 to a 10.5 somewhere along the hike, and I also started using the 6s. I think the first pair might have been the 4s, maybe the 5s, but somewhere mid-hike the 6s came out and started to become available, and so that's what I started to use. And I noticed some big changes from the 4s. Well, the 4 and the 5s were really similar, but then moving from the 5s to these 6s, I noticed some serious changes. The shoe got a lot more rigid. It feels way more durable, probably a little bit heavier weight as well. I feel like these are all good qualities for like a long distance hike. I would, after I went with the 6s the first time, I was determined to get the 6s every time after that because I really felt like they upgraded from the 5s. But one thing they didn't upgrade with, right, was the rigidity. There's actually like a break-in period with these 6s, for me at least. The way the heel or the ankle part right here comes up, I want to say it was the right foot. I'm not really sure. It could have been the left, but right here in this area where it would come up, my ankle ball would sit right there, and like throughout the day it would really start to bother me. I remember when I was at the Broken Fiddle southbound, I was like setting something like heavy, like a sandbag or something on top of this, trying to like fold it over just to get it to break in for me a little bit quicker. And that's an issue I did not have with the Olympus 4s or the 5s. So that's new to these shoes. And I think, like I said, if you're on a long distance hike, it's probably worth dealing with for the more rigid, design that the 6 is. Now, somewhere southbound, I want to say Marion, Virginia, my shoes were falling apart and I decided to get another pair. The outfitter didn't have any of the Olympus 6s, so I decided to go back to a pair of Lone Peaks. These are basically exactly what I had in 2020 that I had bought in Irwin, probably 2 or 3 models, newer than the ones I had back in 2020. I was really expecting to have sore feet whenever I switched back to these because, talking about a really big difference in sole here, right? But that was not the case. These shoes actually kept my feet just as comfortable. And if anything, I'd really prefer to walk in these. I don't really like that really high sole. I thought it was necessary to keep my feet like cushioned from the rocks. But after going back to the Lone Peaks, I decided that extra cushion wasn't really necessary for me. However, these shoes came with another issue for me. Every time I would walk through like a deep water source or really just get them soaking wet, within the next hour or two, I would have the soles would start to ride up out of the heel to the point where I'd have to stop, untie the shoes, and push the soles back in there. And that became extremely annoying, right? And I'd say that's the only reason I decided to go back to the Olympus. Well, I think I got these in Front Royal maybe. And then I went back to the Olympus in Marion, and I finished up the hike with the Olympus. And yeah, so it's not just about the really big sole with these. Another thing I don't like about them is the price point. The Lone Peaks come in at like, I don't know, $130 or something after tax. These are like $180 or $190 after tax. So there's a pretty significant price difference here. And but I just couldn't stand, taking my shoes off 2 or 3 times a day when they were wet to push the soles back in there. If you're walking, through rain or water sources all day, it can already be aggravating in a long distance hike. So to add this extra layer process of sitting down in the rain and taking my shoes off and fixing the soles, that really didn't jive with me. Now, I'm kind of torn, right? For this next hike on the Bayou State Trail, I want to start in these, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have the same issue with the sole riding out the back, and I only have one pair. I really enjoy running in these, right? These, the Olympus are a little bit more challenging to run in. Like every time you hit the ground, it feels a little too bouncy or cushiony. The Lone Peaks just work a lot better for running for me. So I'm thinking I'm gonna start off the Bayou State Trail with the Olympus 6s. And this is an old pair I had. For some reason, they wore out, really uneven. This right shoe, right toe cap completely busted out. Yeah, and the left one looked almost brand new. So what I did was I mailed these home, and I figured I could, really glue this cap and fix it up good enough to get some more miles, and I would use them later on in the future. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start the Bayou State Trail in these shoes, and I'm hoping to get a solid 150, 200 miles in them before this toe cap completely, blows out on me. And after that, I'm gonna switch over to the 6s that I was using when I finished up the trail. Yeah, these are still in really good condition. I think I could get 200 miles out of these, no problem. Also, there's going to be a lot of flat road walking here on the Bayou State Trail. I think a lot of what really breaks shoes down on the Appalachian Trail is the terrain, right? Kicking rocks and roots constantly. So that's my thoughts on shoes. That's what brought me to the, wide toe box trail runners initially, and that's why I'm still obsessed with them. Something that's been on my mind since last year when I was in the 100-mile wilderness, I met this guy. His trail name was Rico Suave, and he had a pair of boots that he wore all the way from Springer Mountain into the 100-mile wilderness. And he said he had to get them resoled one time along the way. These were the Russell moccasin boots, the Earl Schaefer style or model, right? It's like a really high leather boot. And these boots supposedly have been around for a really long time. I know the website says that Winston Churchill wore them, and it's just like a really old school design for a boot that's meant to last a lifetime. And you might have to get them resoled a time or two throughout their lifetime, but the actual boot itself is going to last. And that's something I'm really interested in moving to. It's not going to be anytime soon because I'm pretty broke right now. But they're like $800 too, right? That kills me. But I spent way more than $800 on shoes on my hike last year. So if I could get into a boot like that would just last a lifetime, and I could just resole them every so often for a reasonable price, that's really where I would like to move. But like I said, that's just future plans. For this next upcoming hike, it's going to be Ultras because that's what I got. Matter of fact, for this next upcoming hike, all my gear is going to be the used stuff that I already have. I'm going to pinch pennies as much as I can because I got another hike I really want to make happen in the fall. But yeah, that's all I got for shoes today, guys. Thank y'all for watching, and stay tuned for a gear video coming up soon.